You're listening to Spotlight, the podcast that fosters connections with veterans and military spouses. Here's your host, Bob Louthan.
This is your host, Bob Louthan, the founder of the Veteran Crowd Network, the network that brings veterans and veteran-led businesses together with each other and the resources they need to prosper. And you are tuning into the Spotlight. And now a word about a Veteran Crowd Spotlight partner, Fund the First. Fund the First is the nation's leading crowdfunding platform for first responders, military, and medical professionals. Thanks to a partnership with ID.me, Fund the First is able to combat fraud and scams to ensure donors that money is going to a verified and trusted source. Visit fundthefirst.com for more details. Fund the First, crowdfunding for our nation's heroes. Welcome, everybody. Very pleased to have with us today our guest, Nicole Malone. She is a U.S. Air Force veteran, having spent 14 years in the Air Force. She's a podcaster with Sneakyfit Podcast and an entrepreneur and the founder of Horse Nutrition. Nicole, thank you for stepping into the spotlight today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Very good. Hey, the first question, just where does the name Horse Nutrition come from?
I get that question a lot. Yep. So I get that question a lot. So it started with coming up with a name for a business is super hard. So I started doing a search, and I'm a very symbolic person. My mom and I actually got lotus flower tattoos, matching tattoos, which symbolizes rebirth. And Dark Horse, fun fact, actually symbolizes transformation. So my logo, the lotus flower and the dark horse actually go together symbolically. And of course, that's what I'm trying to do through my nutrition coaching, is transform people's lives for the better.
That's fantastic. Well, let's go back and tell us a little bit about where you grew up and how did you end up joining the United States Air Force? I know there's a story behind the recruiting discussion. So I already learned that, but anyway.
Yeah, so as my husband would say, I grew up under a bridge, but true story is I grew up in Camden, New Jersey, actually on the corner of the bridge, the Walt Whitman. But yeah, I was always active growing up. I hated school though. I love the social aspect of school. I love the sports aspect of school, but I hated the learning aspect, which you actually go to school for. So I didn't go to college right out of high school. I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I was sitting on my parents' couch, bored out of my mind. I saw a cool Army recruiting video of people low crawling and all that, and that looked really fun. So I was like, I'm going to go to the recruiter's office.
Low crawling is fun, folks.
Low crawling is fun. So I ended up just spur of the moment, just drove to the recruiter station. My parents were at work. They had no idea. It was about June of 2001. So a little before my 21st birthday. So as you see, there's something about to happen. So
right.
I went to the recruiter station. I had every intention of joining the Marines because, again, low crawling's fun, getting dirty is fun, shooting guns looked fun. But he was out to lunch. Literally every single recruiter in the recruiter station was out to lunch except the Air Force recruiter. So that's actually how I ended up in the Air Force. It was kind of a default. So I enlisted in June of 2001. I was in what you call the delay entry program. I was supposed to go to basic training August of 2001. I was delayed. I forget why now, but I was delayed. My new basic training date was September 11th, 2001. So of course I was delayed.
You were delayed or you were on your way?
No, I was delayed. I was supposed to leave that day. So I was sleeping. My mom runs up the stairs and turns on the TV just in time, because we all missed the first plane hit. So just in time to see the second plane hit the tower. And I literally thought it was a movie. And as soon as I saw that, my recruiter called. He was supposed to come that morning to pick me up and take me to the hotel, do all the processing, and then go to the airport. So I was scheduled to leave out of the Philadelphia International Airport. So the plane that hit, or the plane that crashed, I think outside of Philadelphia, left out of Newark, New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
So all of my friends and family knew I was leaving that day. They
Oh,
didn't know out of what
right,
airport. So a
right.
lot of them thought I left out of Newark, and I was probably on that plane that crashed
Right.
outside of in Pennsylvania. So I ended up getting to basic training on, I believe, the 14th. I think planes were grounded for 3 days. So I ended up getting to Lackland Air Force Base September 14th, 2001, missed the entire first week. I enlisted as a cop. So after basic training, for those who don't know, security forces, military cop is part of the combat force of the Air Force. So we're the ones who do the convoys and all that stuff overseas. So we weren't sure if we're going to go to tech school, to the military police academy, or go directly to our first base and then deploy. Like, we had no idea what was going on. It was pretty scary. So then we got to the police academy, and the training instructors, again, didn't know if we were going to cut our training short and then automatically deploy us. No one knew what was going on. So as a new trainee and a new recruit, like, it was a pretty scary time.
It's disconcerting enough without the complicated. Did you ultimately, what was your first deployment during that period? So
we did end up finishing training. We did end up going to our first base. So my first base was Minot, North Dakota, Minot Air Force Base.
Did they send you in the middle of February?
They actually, yes. Actually, I did get there in February of 2002. Their motto is "Freezing is the reason, only the best come north." It literally gets like -70, I think it was, with the wind chill, of course. Like, it gets ungodly cold. But yeah, that was my first base, and I was working in the missile field. So because of that, at the time, they're deployable now, but when I was in, if you were working in the missile fields, with the Minuteman IIIs or whatever, as a cop, you're non-deployable. They are deployable now, but when I was in, we weren't deployable. So I was fortunate enough to not deploy. I did go to Korea, but yeah, I didn't end up deploying after all of that.
So you 14 years later, you transition out of the Air Force. Tell me what's going on, because you've just recently sort of launched the company.
So I got out. I got out of active duty in 2006. So I served 4.5 years of my 4-year term. Because in order to come back to the States from Korea, I had to extend an extra 6 months to give me that full year. And again, I went to the IRR for 8 months, but I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I'd never finished college. So I ended up joining the Air National Guard. I was full-time. So I was a GS employee, but 1 week and 2 weeks a year, but during the week I was working for the Air Force in my uniform as a GS employee. I did end up finishing my degree in 2017, actually. So just recently, I actually finished my 4-year degree, 18 years later.
What is that degree?
Criminal justice.
Okay.
And then, so I got out of the Guard in 2016. In the Guard, I was an intel analyst. That's where that answer came from earlier. But I was an intel analyst, so I transitioned to contractor here in Northern Virginia, where I live now, as an intel analyst. So when COVID hit, I was furloughed, 100% furloughed. I'm part-time now. They brought us back kind of every other week, but I was 100% furloughed. So I just took the opportunity to kind of do what I always wanted to do, and just was too scared to do it. I just kind of just shut my eyes and got my certification, launched my business, and I launched in June 24th, 2020 was when I got my LLC, and just been trying to grow it ever since, while I'm still on this crazy COVID schedule.
You just got to do it, right? It's like podcasting. You just got to do it. And, sometimes we talk about entrepreneurship, we're kind of building the airplane while we're flying it. It's an interesting lifestyle. So let's talk about your interest in nutrition and coaching. And then we're going to dive into, why so many people have a hard time with dieting. And that's
Yeah,
the mental side of it, right? But
of
how
course.
did nutrition and coaching and nutrition become your passion?
So I've always been passionate about the fitness industry. I actually thought I was going to be a personal trainer. I love working out. I love doing CrossFit, throwing around a heavy barbell, chalking up my hands. I love working out, anything active. So I actually thought I was going to become a personal trainer. Um, when I got out of the military and lost that structure, I kind of fell off the wagon a little bit, and I started to slowly gain weight. So when I got married in 2015, I was probably, my best guesstimate, probably 40 pounds overweight on my actual wedding day.
Mm.
And my weight just kept fluctuating from there. And I had a hard time losing it. So I did all sorts of yo-yo dieting. I was busting my butt in the gym, but I wasn't losing the weight. And it was through that experience that I realized that it's so much more than what you do in the gym. For me personally, I was struggling with mental health issues from what my family went through when I was a kid. So I never dealt with that. As soon as I sought therapy, I would say about 2 years now, 2 or 3 years ago, that's when I started to see the world differently and in a more positive light. And as soon as that happened, everything just clicked and fell into place. And I was able to regain my passion for, not only working out, but just myself, like be happy with myself and in a good place, that I was able to get my weight under control. So I have since lost most of that weight. I haven't lost 100% of it, but I'm almost there. But that's why I made the ultimate transition from wanting to be a personal trainer to nutrition, because I feel like you can work with people on a more deeper level when it comes to food, because through my experience, I realized that food is everyone's comfort. It's how you deal with emotion. And I know firsthand how hard it is to overcome, and how great your life will be and can be once you overcome those barriers. So that's ultimately why I went to nutrition, because through my personal experience, I just recognized how much more important that is than what you do in the gym.
We're bombarded with messaging in the media, Nutrisystem and all of these things. And, they make it seem like, well, all you have to do is eat the right foods. And I have discovered for myself personally that bread is the biggest sin for my body, but that might, you know, not be the case for somebody else. But I used to, pound down the dinner rolls, and gosh, when I stopped, I think I lost 15 pounds,
Yeah.
just because of that. But there's a lot of discipline in this. Let's talk about nutritional science first, and then jump over into the mental and emotional component of it. So lean proteins, fruits and vegetables, right? Seems pretty straightforward. Or is there more to it than that, right?
So in my opinion, and the opinion of so many others in my field, is out of the macronutrients, which are proteins, carbs, fats, fiber is technically considered a carb. So is fruits and vegetables. For all those people wanting to do keto out there and cut carbs, fruits and vegetables are technically a carb. But
Mm-hmm.
protein is probably, especially when it comes to weight loss, I harp on protein, fiber, and water. So if you want to lose weight, the key isn't to cut things out or eliminate things from your diet. And carbs are not the devil. You actually need carbs. Your body needs insulin. Your brain needs insulin to function properly. So carbs are not the devil, and carbs are the first thing people want to eliminate when they lose weight. And that is where the yo-yo dieting and the detriment comes with your health, because once you start, carbs are everywhere. They're in your face. Like, you can't escape carbs. You can't escape processed foods. Like, our food industry is absolutely horrendous, and it's unfortunate, but no one can completely eliminate carbs from their lifestyle or diet. And when I mean diet, I mean way of eating, not how the term diet has actually become to mean, because the actual word actually means way of eating. So no one can really eliminate or avoid carbs for the rest of their life. So that's what gets people in trouble, because mainstream marketing and the health and wellness industry, like you said, Nutrisystem and all these other fads out there, want you to eliminate things. And the things that they want to eliminate more often than not are carbs. So that's what gets people in trouble. But if you want to lose weight, the key is to not eliminate something that's not sustainable for the rest of your life, because you're going to end up gaining the weight back, but increase your protein intake, because it keeps you fuller longer. It has a higher thermic effect, so it takes longer to digest. That's why it keeps you fuller longer. And your body burns more calories digesting protein, because again, it takes longer to digest. Depending on how much protein you eat, it can take upwards of 6-7 hours to completely digest. That's a long time. Fiber, for the same reason, it not only helps your bowel movements, but it also has that same satiating effect. It also helps keep you fuller longer, because a lot of foods containing high fiber, such as beans, legumes, nuts, seeds, fruits, vegetables, and all that, are low calorie dense. So you can eat a higher volume of those types of foods for low calories. So that's why I think increasing your fiber is important, because it'll help limit your snacking or your cravings to snack. And then water, of course, water is very important. None of us drink enough water, or very few of us drink enough water.
What about exercise? And let's talk a little bit about the chemistry of exercise, if you will. I find that exercise makes me feel better. And it helps my mental state. Right?
Oh yeah, of course. So we all know our hormone. Well, some of us know our hormones, but for those who don't, you have cortisol, which is our stress hormone, dopamine, reward. Your brain gets a signal and happy. And of course, your endorphins, which everyone throws around, like when you work out, your endorphins are flowing or whatever. So that's another feel-good hormone. But yeah, when you work out, it definitely clears your mind, and it gets the dopamine, the endorphins, all those feel-good hormones flowing. It also decreases your stress level, which of course will help with your mental state, and in turn will help with the emotional eating. So yeah, exercise is definitely super important. I wouldn't say that when it comes to weight loss, it's just another tool in your toolbox. I wouldn't forego or let your nutrition slip because you're stressing out about the gym. If you have to choose one or the other, in my opinion, I would choose nutrition over fitness when it comes to weight loss. But when it comes to your overall health, exercise is super important. And I do want to point out that if you're a female listening to this podcast, females have a tendency to be drawn to just cardio. Men have a tendency to be drawn to just weights. It's just how the breakdown is. For the most part, not in all cases, but it's important to incorporate both when you're working out as well, not only for weight loss, but for your overall health. Because as you age, you lose bone density, you lose lean muscle mass. If you're a woman going through menopause, the nasty change, that's all super important, because as your hormones change and you start to lose bone and lean muscle mass, you want to maintain what you currently have. So you should incorporate some sort of weightlifting to your routine, and the same goes to cardio. You should incorporate some cardio onto your routine. So don't think just because you want to lose weight, you only have to stick to cardio. That's not the case at all. And that's another misconception out there.
So let's talk about the mental coaching that you're doing. So the mental health issue part of weight control. So coach me through this. Tell me how you work with your clients. And sort of start out, and where are you headed with the mental side of your coaching practice?
Yeah. So for the purposes of confidentiality, I'll call my current client, I'll call her
Bob.
Susan. Jake,
Yeah.
Jake from State Farm. I'll call her Susan. So Susan has a sugar addiction. Went to Overeaters Anonymous. When she came to
Sugar.
me,
Somebody tells me sugar is like as addictive or more addictive than cocaine. I mean, it just,
I mean,
what does it do to the brain? I mean, is it really that
it's
addictive?
yes. And so when you think of processed foods in general, so it's because they take out, the marketers and the manufacturers of these foods do this on purpose. They remove the nutrients from super processed foods like chips, cookies, and whatever. That's why those types of foods are super addictive, because they remove the nutrients. They're not even food anymore. It's just manufactured, just morphed into junk. And it's super high in fat, super high in sodium, and super high in sugar. So that's literally what
They're
processed foods
doing
are.
this on purpose to
They're
get you
doing that on
addicted to
purpose
to
because of the
sell more
addictive
food.
quality.
Yeah.
And when you are emotional, regardless of what type of emotion, I'm not talking happy. I'm talking like if you're depressed, if you're stressed or whatever, I don't want to get super deep into hormones, but I will say that your hormones play a part and play a role in why we reach for those types of foods, because you want to feel good. And we already talked about dopamine. So if you eat, say, a chocolate chip cookie, your brain's going to receive the signal, which is dopamine, that it just got a reward, it's happy, and now it wants more. And I like to compare that to like a trophy. Everyone gets a trophy nowadays. So like you win a trophy, you want to keep winning. So that's the same thing that's happening internally, is your brain thinks it's winning and it wants to keep winning. So what I do, like for instance with my client we'll call Susan,
Right.
who has a sugar addiction, who emotionally eats and struggles with that, and struggles with binging, what I do is it's important to replace it with a healthier habit. So find an alternative to replace the eating. So like when you're feeling a certain way, like for me, when I'm stressed or emotional, sad, frustrated, whatever, I go to the gym or I take a walk rather than eating. So it's just finding a healthy alternative. That's one. Two, it's in the beginning, what I did with Susan is I replaced it with something else similar. Like I would send her recipes to bake cookies, but low sugar cookies. So it'll curb that craving and give her the same sensation without the high amount of sugar that will want her to crave more and binge more. Because that's truly what happens, is that amount of sugar makes you want to crave and continue eating more. So
How long does it take to overcome a sugar addiction? I mean, with good habits, right?
So for her, I started working with Susan in July, and she now, so is this March? So it's been about 7 months. So, and mind you, before she started working with me, she did go through Overeaters Anonymous, and I forget how long she said that program was. But since she started working with me, she has had moments of binging where her husband had to stop her. She wasn't able to stop herself. But through education, through me providing her information, educating her on what happens to your body when you are emotional, hormones, because that's important. Because if you know these things are going to happen, you can get ahead of it and kind of recognize it sooner. So we kind of work through those to now she's able to recognize this is happening and she's able to stop herself. Of course, there's moments. It's kind of like going to AA. You're not going to be perfect 100% of the times. You're going to have slip ups, but she's now able to recognize when when these things are happening and when these triggers are happening, and she can stop herself for the most part. She'll have to message me every once in a while when she's having a breakdown, an emotional moment, and she wants to eat. But it's important to keep a journal, emotional eating journal, to log how you're feeling before, during, and after you eat, because then you will start to notice a pattern on what is going on in your life. What are you feeling at the moment that you're eating a particular type of food? You'll start to notice a trend and maybe pick up on some triggers that we can then address and kind of not correct, but kind of adjust.
Nicole, this sounds sort of like mindfulness training. And I've had some other guests on that have talked about meditation and mindfulness, and
Yep.
a lot of folks dealing with post-traumatic stress
Yep.
and so forth. Where do these things sort of overlap?
What do you mean overlap?
Well, I'm just talking about the mindfulness. I mean, are you teaching mindfulness in a roundabout way? It sort of sounds like it.
So I tend to, if I have to put a label on it, I would say intuitive eat, mindful eating, like where I don't think about what I'm eating. I just moderation, not deprivation. So I had a Kit Kat. Actually, before I came on here, I had like one little strip of Kit Kat, and that doesn't stress me out. I'll have one, I'll put it away. So yes, that is the ultimate goal when I'm working with clients, and it is all mindset and emotion around food, to recognize that it's kind of like rewiring, because as things we talked about earlier with marketing and the industry and how it's full of misinformation and all these marketers trying to sell their garbage products, people like me are now trying to combat that and combat all the confusion that surrounds food. And food is really not that complicated. It's just, it's been made to be more complicated than it should be.
Yeah,
So,
what percentage of Americans are overweight? I mean, I hear these outstanding, these phenomenal things. And, from the standpoint of the military, we had a situation where something like less than 35% of the youth can actually qualify to go into the service. This is a big problem for our youth, right?
So I'm actually doing preparing for a webinar, so I actually know these numbers, so it's good that you asked. So now these numbers are higher, but as of 2018, I think it was upwards of 44, between 43 and 45% of Americans, this is just Americans, not considering worldwide, just Americans, are considered overweight or obese.
What is the definition of overweight and obese?
They go off your BMI, which
body mass
index. It's just your height, your weight, and it doesn't take into account other factors. So take that with a grain of salt. Now, if you're someone like me who's not super shredded and a bodybuilder, my BMI for the most part is going to be pretty accurate. But if you compare someone my size, my height and weight, to someone who's my height and weight who is a bodybuilder, she might be considered, this is hypothetically, I'm not considered obese, but hypothetically, if she was my height and weight and I'm not shredded and a bodybuilder, compared to someone who's my height and weight and a bodybuilder, and I'm overweight, she would also be considered overweight according to BMI standards. And Air Force had this issue where there were people equivalent to bodybuilders in the Air Force, like pretty jacked dudes, and they measured their neck and they had a huge neck because they were just built, and they would fail the weight and measurement portion of the Air Force standards, because they busted BMI.
Failing them because we don't make them do PE, and they're not taught how to eat right, and they're going to McDonald's, every day growing up.
So I think the BMI measurement is a tool. I don't think that should be the end all be all, like the example I mentioned in the Air Force, but that's essentially what they're basing what the industry is basing the obesity and overweight standards is, per the BMI. But in 2018, it was between 43 and 45% of Americans were considered overweight or obese. Now, I believe it's probably over 50%, if not right at 50%, especially
it's trending
since
in the wrong direction.
It's trending in the wrong direction now. It's kids. Kids are spiking as well. So
I think COVID-19 stands for the 19 pounds I might have gained because
yeah.
of the
you and so many others.
that's just, hey, real quickly, it amazes me how quickly 30 minutes can go by. Talk a little bit about your podcast and tell folks what you do on your podcast, the Sneakyfit Podcast.
Yeah. So I'm the host of the Sneakyfit Podcast. And essentially I just ended my Thursday rant series. I don't know if I'll bring it back, but it's kind of all these things that we talked about, like I hit on MLMs a lot, multi-level marketing, like Beachbody and Arbonne, all these crap products on the market. So I kind of go on rants about them while providing education, but it's kind of like unscripted, unfiltered. But my typical episodes drop on Sundays and it's very informational. My intention behind the podcast is to dispel all the misinformation out there, some of the myths that still might be floating around. The fitness industry, especially in social media, is a hot mess. And people who are not qualified or educated at all are giving health and wellness advice, and people can really get hurt. They can get sick. So it's very dangerous what these people are doing. So my hope is to, have as many people as I can, reach as many people as I can, to actually give them as accurate information as I can, so they don't end up hurting themselves or ending up in the hospital because they listen to someone who isn't qualified to give advice.
Right. Well, listen, gosh, time's gone by quickly. How do folks follow you on social media? And by the way, we'll put links of your podcast and all of your social media on our website and page for this, as in the show notes. But how do people follow Dark Horse Nutrition in particular?
Yeah, of course. So my website is darkhorse-nutrition.com. I also have a Facebook page, which is @nutritiondark. I think you can search that way on Facebook. And I'm on Instagram at sneaky.fit, and I post podcasts, IGTV clips, and as well as nutritional and fitness information.
Okay. Well, everybody, you've been listening to The Spotlight. We've had Nicole Malone, who is the founder and CEO and head coach at Dark Horse Nutrition. She is an Air Force veteran and doing some great things. Really appreciate you stepping into the spotlight today.
Thanks for having me. This was tons of fun.
Hey, you've been listening to The Spotlight on the Veteran Crowd Network. We come into your homes on Tuesdays and Fridays and bring veterans who are making a difference in our community to you each week. Many thanks to Nicole Malone. Nicole, bravo Zulu to you. And that's a wrap.
Thank you for listening to Spotlight by Veteran Crowd. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. For more information and uploads, please visit our website at veterancrowdnetwork.com. We'll see you next time.